Hello and welcome back to Alex FPL. Today I'll be showing you 4 drafts, my main one and 3 alternatives that might make you think. Let's kick off from the back. Robert Sanchez. Chelsea's number 1, going into a second season with a successful manager who prioritizes clean sheets. Good value too. I thought he'd be priced at 5.5 million, but he's only 5. In defense, Gabriel's locked in. He was one of Arsenal's most reliable starters last season. Dangerous from set pieces, and even with Champions League rotation, he's likely too important to bench. Mikolenko is a smart pick. Many people have gone with Tarkovsky, and if you have the extra 0.5 million, then go for it. Mikolenko offers a cheaper alternative who is just as nailed in Everton's backline, with no European commitments. And he showed flashes of attacking upside before his injury last season. Worth noting that Gabriel is currently injured. If that's still the case come game week 1, I'm going with a Liverpool defender, probably Van Dijk. Then there's De Kuyper, but more on him later. Midfield is strong. Salah is a season starter staple. Nailed on pens, and even with Champions League football, he's rarely rotated and delivers every single year, and he just broke the record for FPL points in a season. Some whisper about his age, but until he proves otherwise, he's locked in my team. Palmer had a hot and cold season last year, but I think he's in for a sensational return. He's looked full of confidence over the summer. He's arguably the only nailed attacking player for Chelsea, and on pens. Verts is a bit of a gamble. We haven't seen him in the Premier League, but it's okay to balance risk sometimes as long as we don't go too far. His stats are elite: 23 attacking returns in 31 in the Bundesliga, and 7 attacking returns in 9 in the Champions League. Also, his price tag of 116 million could force Slot's hand somewhat to start him, at least for the start of the season. Kudus is also a gamble. New team, new manager, and a complicated situation with Spurs having finished last season just above relegation, albeit Europa League winners. He's been consistently impressive at West Ham and certainly passes the eye test. So he's a fun player to own if you're watching the games. And as a Spurs fan, I'll be watching him a lot. So perhaps my bias is influencing me on this one. But I think even with the Champions League involvement, he could be just the kind of player Thomas Frank likes. Ndiaye is a calculated punt. No Europe, looks nailed to start, and on pens. These last 2 players are 6.5 million, and it's a good price point which includes other players like Sarr and Matoma. Or, for 0.5 million more, there's the impressive and nailed-on Rodgers for Villa. Equally, either of the Bournemouth boys could be a good pick. Semenyo, who's more dangerous from set play, or Kluivert, who's on pens. Up front, who else but Chris Wood, my GOAT from last season. He's nailed, he's on pens, he's the talisman for the team, and plays as a sole striker in a tactical system set up by Nuno to favour his play. Also, Forest aren't in Europe, so no rotation risk to worry about there. It's true they've sold Elanga, but Gibbs White signed a new contract and isn't going anywhere. There are reports suggesting Forest will take Palace's place in Europe next season, which would make Wood a riskier choice due to rotation. But we won't know the final outcome of the saga until the 11th of August. I'll be covering updates on this channel, so subscribe to be kept in the loop. Welbeck has no European distraction, on pens, no João Pedro potentially stealing minutes away, and if Brighton don't bring in another striker, he could be a great pick. On the bench, we start with Kinski, my second goalkeeper. He's a bit of a silly pick. Some are saying he may take Vicario's place, but the chances of that are really low. If you're picking him thinking he'll start, please don't. I'm just picking him because I know I'm not picking another 2 outfield players from Spurs in the first part of the season, so it doesn't block anything for me. And he offers me a very small chance of being picked over Vicario. But if the ownership goes above 10%, I'm going to be swapping him out. I don't want to take the risk of losing value on a non-playing keeper. Next on the bench, Strand Larsen, a fantastic option when fixtures get tricky for some of the other 6.5 attacking assets. Also on the bench, Konsa, underpriced in my opinion in a Villa side that looked very impressive last season. Worth noting for Konsa though, he faces potential rotation, especially when Villa starts playing in Europe in late September. But I'm confident he'll get some really good minutes and will offer a good rotation for the other 4.5 defenders in the side. I do have my eye on Wan-Bissaka as well, though West Ham's defensive stats aren't great, but I do like his attacking potential. Lastly on the bench, and this is a player I don't expect to feature in my starting 11, I've gone with Burnley defender Steve. I just like saying his name like that, which is why I picked him. Also appears to be a starter in that Burnley defense, so if I'm in a pickle, I could even end up using him. Unlikely though. My name is Steve. This team balances nailed-on picks with riskier options. featuring 5 penalty takers in Salah, Palmer, Woods, Welbeck, and Ndiaye, and potentially Strand Larsen as well, now that Cunha and Sarabia have left Wolves. One criticism for this team would be that it's light on budget for the defenders, but this year, with the introduction of DEFCON points, I think we can find a lot of value in budget defensive picks, especially teams like Everton and Forest, whose defenders benefited massively from the introduction of DEFCON points. Something that some of you may be surprised by is my double up on Brighton, but I back the club. They seem to do well no matter who they sell or which manager comes and goes. They have a solid foundation and always seem to play offensive football, and the results are there too. However, I did get burnt by Barco last season, who was in a similar situation to De Kuiper. However, Barco ended up getting loaned out. So let's assess the situation close to the 15th. I might not want to take that same risk 2 years in a row. Of course, the other potential downside for this team is if Haaland starts the season in the same form he did last year. However, I'm choosing to pick only one of Haaland and Salah, for now anyway. Haaland might make it impossible not to own him, or we may get some game-breaking cheap picks this year that make a team with both viable. If you'd like to see a draft featuring both players, stick around, we cover that later in the video. But as for right now, I'm choosing to go with the record FPL point scorer as my ultra high value pick and perma captain, with an anxious eye on City scores. First up from the alternative drafts, this one features Salah, Saka, and Palmer as the 3 premium midfielders. What puts me off this team is Saka. I want to find out if he's still on pens. If Gyökeres takes them off him, Saka might not be worth the price point. This team features Solanke too, so I've managed to spread the funds around decently, even though we have 3 premium price points in the midfield. The sacrifice was made on the bench. This team does not have a viable attacking option to come in if a player is injured or faces tough opposition. Also, Sanchez has been downgraded to Kelleher. I'm a bit nervous about Brentford and how they'll react to losing their manager and so many important players. Since recording this video, Solanke has been announced as injured, just as I expected, so again, I would not recommend starting with Solanke in your game week 1 teams, but do keep an eye out in case he can stay fit and hit a bit of run of form. Next up, the Haaland and Salah draft. Now, you might expect this team to look pretty unbalanced with 2 heavy hitters like that, but honestly, it's not as weak as you think. The main compromise here is 3 midfielders in the 6.5 million range and a very light bench. But despite that, I don't hate it. If both Salah and Haaland start the season strong, and they look like players we have to own, a bit like last year in those early game weeks, this is a draft I very well might pivot to. Finally, my draft featuring differential and risky picks. There are some here I wouldn't recommend for game week 1, but this is more food for thought than a final team. Starting with Verbruggen and goal for Brighton, decent pick, only owned by 6% of players. Next, Milenkovic, who's only been selected by 7% of players. I think he's going to have an incredible season with the introduction of the DEFCON point system this year. He could be the one to watch from Nottingham Forest's backline. Then we have Mykolenko as a low-owned, solid option. Most are going with Tarkowski, who is 0.5 million more. Both good picks, but Mykolenko offers a cheaper route into the Everton backline. Gordon is not getting much attention, and I'm not sure why. Strong season last year and looks nailed in that Newcastle front line. Only downside is that Newcastle play in Europe this season, so he could face rotation, especially with the incoming Elanga. Eze could be a great pick if Palace don't play European football. Barely seen him in any drafts, only 8% owned. Sarr is 1 million cheaper, has great stats, and actually scored more points in FPL than Eze, and he's only 2% owned, so even more of a differential. Clivert. Love this pick. Only 5% owned. He's on pens, nailed, and looked really sharp last season. Granted, he has a bad first fixture against Liverpool, but that shouldn't put you off him, especially if you can bench him in that first game week. Controversial one here, Bruno Fernandes. A very frustrating player to own. I started with him last season and regretted it massively when I was trying to be different. In his favour, he is nailed, isn't playing in Europe, on pens, and still very much United's talisman. He could come back into the conversation if United find a bit of run of form, but as it currently stands, I will not be starting with him, and neither should you. Mitoma is surprisingly low owned at 5%. I think he's a great differential pick, consistent minutes and no Europe. Haaland, believe it or not, is a differential right now. You have to make a big decision and go either with Salah or with Haaland. Or you could copy the Haaland Salah draft I put together earlier, and if you're happy with no bench and some downgrades across the pitch, that could be a good solution. I don't think Arteta starts with Gyökeres. I think Havertz has a good chance of being in the team in game week 1, with Gyökeres slowly being introduced into the starting 11. But as soon as it's confirmed he's a starter and on pens, I think Gyökeres could potentially make his price point of 9 million look like a steal. One to monitor. João Pedro. Now, I've included him here because he's risky, not because he's a differential. Crazy amount of managers are going with João Pedro. I personally don't get it. Very high ownership, but a trap in my opinion, because he faces competition from Delap and Jackson. Reminds me of the Nkunku hype last year, and we all know how that ended. Now, I do think he'll feature a lot more than Nkunku, but he's far from nailed. I think he'll play a lot off the bench, or he'll play 60 minutes and then get subbed off. Neither are ideal scenarios. One to keep an eye on for me, but I won't be starting with him. Well, that's it for this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It's my second ever YouTube video, as you can probably tell, but I'll be posting regularly, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.